Why are you so terrified of the vacuum that remains when you stop offering yourself up as a shield for everyone else's instability? You have spent a lifetime convincing yourself that carrying the crushing weight of the world on your shoulders is an act of noble benevolence, a testament to your strength or an indispensable duty. But let us strip away the comforting lies of your carefully crafted persona. This relentless compulsion to solve every crisis, absorb every conflict, and remain endlessly available is not virtue. It is a sophisticated mechanism of anxiety, a desperate attempt of your fragile ego to control external narratives and guarantee a sense of safety that you cannot find within your own skin. You do not carry the world because you are strong. You carry it because you are terrified of what you will have to face when your hands are empty and the room falls utterly silent. The tension you feel right now is the slow, suffocating friction between who you actually are and the exhausting, predictable role you have agreed to play for a world that consumes your energy without a second thought. You return home emotionally depleted, staring into the dark with a hollow ache. Yet tomorrow you will instinctively repeat the cycle, answering every call, apologizing for boundaries you haven't even set, and micromanaging the emotional survival of people who only value you for your utility. You are trapped in an invisible prison of your own making, operating under the catastrophic illusion that if you just hold on a little longer, someone will eventually come to rescue you or thank you for your sacrifice. They will not. This script is a direct confrontation with that self-betrayal, a painful but necessary tearing away of your false identity, forcing you to understand that the only way to reclaim your sovereignty is to stop carrying the world alone and dare to drop the weight. Topic 1. The prison of endless availability. You have conditioned everyone around you to treat you as an emergency exit for their own psychological discomfort. The moment someone in your social or professional circle encounters a minor crisis, an internal alarm triggers within you, forcing you to drop your own life, your own peace, and your own boundaries to rush to their aid. You have wrapped this chronic reactivity in the shiny, socially praised packaging of empathy or reliability, but beneath that mask lies a desperate, trembling need for external validation. By making yourself universally accessible at any hour under any circumstance, you haven't built deep, meaningful connections. You have merely transformed your life into a public utility. This mechanical availability is the absolute death of your psychological autonomy. When your phone buzzes or an unexpressed expectation hangs in the air, you do not pause to deliberate. Your nervous system simply hijacks your intellect, forcing a submissive yes from your lips before your mind can even register the exhaustion pulling at your bones. You have taught the world that your time, your emotional reserves, and your mental stability are entirely free for the taking, requiring no reciprocity and no respect. In my life's work, developing analytical psychology, I termed this specific social mask the persona, the compromise between the individual and society as to what a person should appear to be. Your specific persona is the caretaker, the reliable anchor, the one who never breaks. But while this mask receives superficial praise from those who benefit from your compliance, it acts as a brutal filter that completely smothers your true self. You have become so addicted to the reflection of yourself as the good, indispensable person in the eyes of others that you are actively terrified to discover who you actually are without their constant dependency. Consider the immediate physical reactions you experience when you even contemplate turning off your phone, leaving a frantic message unread for hours, or flatly declining a request without providing an elaborate defensive justification. Your heart rate accelerates, a cold knot of guilt tightens in your gut, and a cascade of catastrophic thoughts floods your consciousness. This visceral panic is proof that you are not operating out of free will. You are a hostage to your own conditioning, behaving exactly like a puppet whose strings are pulled by the casual whims of the collective. The profound break in perception occurs when you realize that your endless availability does not cause people to love or value you more. It merely causes them to respect you significantly less. Human nature inherently devalues that which is abundant, predictable, and entirely free of cost. By offering your psychological energy as an infinite resource, you have stripped it of all value, transforming yourself from an individual to be respected into a convenient tool to be utilized and discarded when the crisis passes. Topic 2. The hollow trade-off of self-betrayal. Every single time you swallow your authentic boundaries to maintain a fragile, superficial harmony in your environment, you are committing a silent act of psychological suicide. You believe you are simply being polite, flexible, or accommodating when you laugh at jokes that actively alienate your soul, or when you sit quietly through conversations that drain your spirit. But your unconscious mind keeps an impeccable ledger of these compromises. It doesn't care about the rationalizations your ego invents to justify your cowardice. It only records the raw, unvarnished truth. You chose the comfort of a stranger over the integrity of your own being. This chronic self-betrayal manifests as an omnipresent, low-grade exhaustion that no amount of sleep can ever cure. It is the distinct fatigue of a performer who has been on stage for 10 years straight without an intermission, playing to an audience that doesn't even know their real name. You are constantly managing impressions, editing your tone, filtering your thoughts, and measuring your responses, all to ensure that the fragile illusions of those around you remain entirely undisturbed. When the ego isolates itself from the self, the deep, organizing center of the total psyche, to serve the demands of external adaptation, a severe psychological fragmentation occurs. You become a collection of fragmented, hollow caricatures, one version for your demanding family, another for your opportunistic friends, and yet another for your professional life. The real tragedy is that in your frantic effort to ensure that everyone else feels understood and secure, you have left your own inner world completely desolate, abandoned like an unwanted child in the dark. Look honestly at your persistent anxiety, your sudden bursts of unprovoked irritability, or that heavy, existential vacuum that settles over you the second you are left entirely alone with your thoughts. These distressing symptoms are not random biochemical glitches, nor are they a sign that you are broken. They are the desperate, furious indicators of your ignored psyche. Your soul is screaming through these neuroses because it is starved for authenticity, suffocating under the mountain of false compliance you pile on top of it every day. The sudden shatter of your worldview happens when you recognize that the peaceful harmony you think you are preserving through your constant sacrifice is entirely fraudulent. It is an artificial peace bought with the currency of your own vitality. You aren't avoiding conflict, you are merely absorbing the impact of that conflict into your own body, converting what should be an external boundary line into a slow, corrosive, internal poison. Topic 3. The exhausting economy of psychic energy. Your mind is not an infinite fountain of emotional resilience. It is a closed, highly sensitive economic system of psychic energy. Every single interaction, every defensive thought, every forced smile, and every urgent attempt to fix someone else's catastrophic life represents a direct, non-refundable expenditure of your limited life force. Yet, you distribute this priceless currency as if you were a multimillionaire, scattering your attention and emotional labor to anyone who happens to shout loudly enough or look sufficiently pathetic in your direction. When you exhaust your psychic energy on useless arguments, unreciprocated relationships, and the chronic management of other people's emotional immaturity, your internal system faces a severe deficit. You are left spiritually bankrupt, operating on pure survival adrenaline. In this state of profound depletion, your capacity for genuine creative thought, deep insight, and true personal evolution drops to absolute zero. You become reactive, defensive, and incredibly fragile, a hollow shell easily swept away by the cultural currents of your time. I have written extensively that whatever you choose to fight, resist, or obsessively manage is precisely what you give ultimate power over your life. When you spend your evenings ruminating over an unfair critique or obsessively strategizing how to alter someone's negative perception of you, you are actively sending a massive pipeline of your own psychic energy directly into their camp. You are keeping their projections alive within your own mental house, willingly funding the very parasite that is draining your psychological sovereignty. Notice the severe physical heavy feeling that blankets your chest after spending time with certain people. Those emotional vampires who leave you feeling empty, confused, and vaguely ashamed of your own existence. They didn't use force to steal your peace. You handed it to them on a silver platter because you lacked the stomach to endure the momentary discomfort of an unembellished no. You let them bleed your system dry because your unconscious mind is addicted to the brief, intoxicating high of being needed. The profound shift in perspective arrives when you accept that saving your psychic energy is a matter of life and death for your personal development. Choosing to step back, to remain totally silent, or to allow someone else's self-inflicted disaster to play out without your intervention is not cruelty. It is an act of absolute psychological preservation, a declaration that your life force belongs to your own evolution, not to the endless maintenance of collective stagnation. Topic 4. Dismantling the scripted theater of manipulation. The human relationships you currently engage in are not nearly as spontaneous or sincere as your ego desperately wants to believe. They are, in reality, highly scripted, subconscious theatrical productions where everyone is desperately looking for an actor to play a specific role in their personal neurosis. Opportunistic and manipulative individuals do not require overt aggression or threats to control you. They simply scan your behavior for exposed psychological vulnerabilities, your deep fear of rejection, your dread of conflict, or your pathological need to be seen as the savior, and they press those buttons with surgical precision. This dynamic relies heavily on what we call projection, the unconscious psychic mechanism where an individual expels their own unacknowledged flaws, dependencies, and dark impulses onto an external object. Because you are so wide open and terrified of being disliked, you have become the perfect, pristine canvas for everyone else's psychological trash. When a toxic partner, a demanding friend, or an entitled colleague projects their inner chaos onto you, blaming you for their unhappiness, you don't reject it. You eagerly catch it, inspect it, and begin agonizing over how you can fix it. You have willingly entered into an unspoken, deeply toxic agreement with your exploiters. They get to avoid the agonizing work of confronting their own sombra, their personal shadow, while you get to feel noble, suffering under the weight of their accusations and demands. The manipulation is incredibly elegant because it functions entirely through the leverage of weaponized guilt. You are made to feel that any attempt to protect your time, prioritize your mental health, or pull back your emotional investment is an act of monstrous selfishness. Look closely at the repetitive cycles in your closest relationships, the dramatic crises that always seem to require your financial, emotional, or logistical rescue, followed by brief periods of shallow gratitude right before the next disaster is conveniently manufactured. You are not helping these people. You are actively enabling their psychological arrested development. More importantly, you are using their chaotic, noisy lives as a brilliant, unconscious distraction to avoid looking into the deep, terrifying void of your own unlived life. The sharp break in your understanding occurs the exact moment you realize that the only thing keeping this entire manipulative theater alive is your predictable, automatic reaction. When you choose to step entirely off the stage, refuse to speak your lines, and offer nothing but a cold, unyielding silence to their emotional bait, their script instantly falls apart. They will scream, they will accuse you of being unfeeling, but they will be utterly powerless because their control over you requires your active participation. Topic 5. The strategic sovereignty of silence. In a modern culture that is deafeningly noisy, where every individual is desperately screaming to be noticed, to defend their fragile opinions, and to control the social narrative, true psychological power lies in the absolute mastery of silence. I am not speaking of the sullen, passive-aggressive silence of a child who is sulking because they didn't get their way. I am speaking of a highly conscious, strategic, and deeply confronting silence that stems from absolute internal alignment and unyielding authority. It is a silence that does not flee from conflict, but holds its ground so completely that it alters the entire psychic field of the room. When you refuse to offer an immediate, anxious justification for your actions, your choices, or your absences, you are performing a revolutionary act. The average person is completely addicted to explaining themselves. They beg for permission to exist, attempting to build a logical bridge so that their critic will understand and approve of their life. But when someone confronts you with a manipulative accusation or an unfair demand, and you respond with absolute, unblinking silence, you throw them into an immediate psychological panic. This profound panic occurs because your total lack of an emotional reaction completely deprives them of a mirror for their own projection. They expect your defensiveness, your anger, or your pleading justification, all of which keep them firmly in control of the interaction. But your silence acts like a dark, bottomless abyss. It forces their weaponized words to ricochet directly back into their own face, forcing them to confront the ugly, screaming emptiness of their own internal shadow. Observe the immense, almost physical discomfort that crawls over you during a tense conversation when you choose to simply stop speaking and let an awkward silence hang heavily in the air. Every conditioned muscle in your body will scream at you to fill that void, to smooth things over, to explain away the tension, or to offer a comforting lie. That intense discomfort is the dying gasp of your old, people-pleasing ego, which is utterly terrified of being misunderstood or viewed as cold. The radical transformation of your awareness happens when you realize that you owe absolutely no one an explanation for the trajectory of your soul. Silence is the native language of the integrated individual. It is the ultimate declaration of psychological sovereignty, communicating to the world that your internal truth is entirely non-negotiable and that you have zero interest in defending your identity before a jury that has no right to judge you. Topic 6. Navigating the sacred isolation of individuation. The journey toward genuine psychological wholeness, the process I defined as individuation, is fundamentally impossible to achieve if you remain permanently tethered to the approval, expectations, and comfortable opinions of the collective crowd. It demands, by its very nature, a painful, deliberate entry into what can only be described as a sacred isolation. This is not a state of bitter, depressive withdrawal from the human race, but a vital, conscious pulling back of your psychic energy from the social games that have kept your mind stunted for decades. To truly step back and become unavailable to the trivial demands of the world is an incredibly destabilizing experience at first. You will be forced to sit alone in a quiet room, stripped of the constant noise, the artificial praise, and the endless crises that previously gave you a false sense of purpose. In that heavy stillness, the terrifying phantoms of your own unexamined life will begin to emerge from the darkness of your unconscious. You will have to face your profound fear of insignificance, your deep-seated loneliness, and the realization of how much of your limited life you have entirely wasted trying to appease people who do not matter. This painful isolation is the precise crucible where the old, socially conditioned self is systematically melted down so that the authentic individual can be born. As long as you are constantly surrounded by the frantic noise of others, you cannot possibly hear the subtle, quiet voice of your own inner guide. You are merely an echo of public opinion, a mirror reflecting whatever environment you happen to inhabit. The sacred retreat into yourself allows you to firmly anchor your identity in the deep bedrock of the self, rather than leaving it floating on the chaotic waves of external approval. Notice the immediate, aggressive resistance you will encounter from your immediate social circle the moment you begin to step into this protective isolation. Friends will accuse you of being distant, family will guilt you for changing, and those who once exploited your time will claim you are becoming arrogant or cold. They are not mourning the loss of you, they are mourning the loss of their convenient, submissive doormat. Their anger is the definitive proof that your new boundaries are working perfectly, disrupting the parasitic equilibrium they enjoyed at your expense. The profound shift in your perception occurs when you realize that this inner solitude is not a prison sentence, but the ultimate sanctuary of true freedom. It is only within this quiet, self-contained space that you can stop merely reacting to life and finally begin creating it from a position of absolute internal alignment. The solitude of the strong is the exact place where your scattered energy integrates, transforming you into a force that can no longer be easily manipulated or broken by the world. Topic 7. The bitter medicine of integrating the shadow. You cannot stop carrying the world alone until you have the raw courage to look directly into your own sombra, the dark, unacknowledged, and repressed underworld of your own psyche. You have built an elaborate, polished narrative that you are simply too kind, too empathetic, and too giving to say no. But this saintly image is a massive, self-serving delusion. If we dig beneath your surface-level altruism, we do not find pure, unconditional love. We find a dark, festering swamp of unexpressed resentment, a profound fear of confrontation, and a manipulative desire to make everyone dependent upon you so they can never leave you. Your inability to set boundaries is actually a form of deep, moral laziness. It is far easier for your ego to comply, say yes, and quietly simmer in toxic resentment than it is to stand tall, look someone in the eye, and endure the terrifying discomfort of their disapproval. You have chosen the path of least immediate resistance, voluntarily trading your long-term psychological integrity for a brief, fleeting moment of superficial social safety. Integrating your shadow demands that you aggressively strip away the comforting lies of your self-sacrificing persona. You must confront the harsh truth that your pathological need to save everyone else is an unconscious projection of your own deep refusal to save yourself. You are intentionally manufacturing a chaotic lifestyle filled with other people's emergencies, precisely because you are absolutely terrified to look at the massive, unresolved disasters lurking within your own internal house. Look at the deep bitterness that poisons your thoughts when you see others confidently putting themselves first, setting ruthless boundaries, and refusing to explain their choices to anyone. That intense bitterness is not righteous moral indignation. It is your repressed shadow, screaming with jealousy. It is the part of your soul that desperately wishes it had the courage to act with the same level of self-respect, instead of choosing to remain trapped in your self-inflicted martyrdom. The turning point in your awareness occurs when you understand that becoming a whole, integrated human being requires you to integrate your capacity for aggression and cold refusal. True virtue is not the innocence of a harmless sheep who cannot bite. True virtue is the complete command of a powerful beast that chooses to keep its weapons holstered, but will not hesitate to use them if its internal sanctuary is violated. You must allow your shadow to give you a backbone, realizing that saying a firm, unapologetic no is the highest act of love you can offer to your own life. Topic 8. The emergence of psychological integrity. When you finally stop begging the external world to validate your choices, your emotions, and your boundaries, you cross a silent, irreversible threshold into true psychological integrity. This is the exalted state of an individual whose center of gravity has permanently shifted from the volatile periphery of public opinion directly into the unshakable axis of the self. You no longer present your truth to others as a desperate plea for acceptance. You present it simply as an objective, non-negotiable fact of reality. You do not try to convince, you simply express. An integrated human being possesses a distinct magnetic density that cannot be simulated, faked, or purchased. When you occupy an environment from this state of internal alignment, you do not need to raise your voice, engage in petty arguments, or perform elaborate displays of authority to command respect. Your complete refusal to participate in manipulative emotional games or offer defensive explanations instantly alters the entire dynamic of your relationships. You become a psychological wall against which other people's toxic projections simply shatter and slide away. This absolute integrity requires an unyielding daily discipline of self-respect. It means that when an environment, a conversation, or a relationship does not resonate with the deep truth of your soul, you do not adjust yourself to fit it. You do not smile politely through the violation. You simply walk away, draw a line, or hold a silence so total that it requires no further explanation. You accept, with absolute calmness, the reality that you will be misunderstood, misjudged, or even disliked by those who require your submission to feel secure. Consider the immense liberating clarity that fills your entire existence when you finally stop outsourcing your self-worth to the shifting moods of a distracted, chaotic collective. The chronic, exhausting background noise of social anxiety, the obsessive rumination over what others think, and the agonizing guilt of saying no simply evaporate. You are no longer a fragmented character scattered across dozens of different social stages. You are finally whole, unified, and completely sovereign within your own skin. The ultimate break in your perception happens when you realize that your psychological integrity is the only true wealth you will ever possess in this life. Everything else, social status, shallow friendships, external praise, is merely a passing illusion that can be swept away in a single day. When you choose to stand unyielding in your own truth, refusing to ever betray your soul for the comfort of the crowd, the entire world is forced to adapt to your presence, rather than you constantly dissolving into theirs. To drop the crushing weight of a world you were never meant to carry is to intentionally cross through a terrifying fire of isolation and profound misunderstanding. It requires you to actively witness the collapse of relationships that were built exclusively on your submission, and to stand entirely alone while the old, people-pleasing illusions of your ego burn down to absolute ash. But I promise you, within that silent, unburdened space, you will experience the magnificent, long-awaited birth of your own psychological autonomy. You will finally look into the mirror and see not a fragile, exhausted puppet of the collective, but a whole, integrated individual who has reclaimed their energy, consolidated their shadow, and taken absolute responsibility for their own existence. If this direct confrontation has shattered the comfortable illusions of your self-sacrificing persona and made deep sense to your soul, you have already begun to see what the vast majority of the collective sleepwalks to avoid. Prove that you have the raw courage to step out of the theater of manipulation by clicking the subscribe button right now to join this quiet revolution of independent minds. Do not leave this space passively. Scroll down to the comments and declare your commitment to your own psychological integrity by writing a specific reflection on the exact burden you are choosing to drop today. Or simply state, "I choose my peace." Let us see who among you possesses the rare strength to face their own soul and claim their absolute freedom.